one today. Big one today. So, Athlete Builder, we're back in the library. I'm your host, Jim Beebe, my teammate, Lucas Lorian. Today we have Zach Evan-Esh from the East Coast in New Jersey. Big one today. A lot of things I want to just get into. I'm a really fast talker, especially when I get excited. So, slow me down, anybody. But, Zach Evan-Esh, so many things to say. Strength athlete. Parents were from different country, Romania and Israel. So now he's next generation, immigrant, runs the Strong Life podcast, almost 450 episodes, runs the Underground Strength Gym, has over 10 books published on Amazon.
Nice. The original.
Let's say, doing my research, I would say he liked riding his bike a lot, but also played soccer and then big into wrestling and then fighting on the street, but also more professionally than that. Been around a number of years. He's like an old school guy, but he's younger than I am, right? Has a lot less gray, but been around, been through the West Side Group, worked with Matt Winning, worked with fighters, you name it. And so he's worked with, I would say, primarily with youth, and within that niche, primarily wrestlers, but other athletes. Worked with adults, works with first responders. And if I had to sum it up, he's just trying to make an impact before he dies, right? While making people stronger mentally and physically. And if you find anyone that seems to be their calling, like hold on to that person, because there aren't many. And if you find them, soak up whatever you can. That's what we're looking to do today. So we got a quick hour to be with Zach. Zach, thank you. Thank you for being on today. We're humbled to have you here. Been looking forward to it. My wife's been looking forward to it. Luke has been looking forward to it. People I've been telling at the gym been looking forward to it. So Thank you. Thank you for being here today, Zach.
That's amazing. Thanks for inviting me. Man, I love the intro. A lot of people give intros, but I don't know. I love what you said about when you're around somebody who's passionate, hold on to them. Because, before we recorded, we're talking about Lucas in his kind of initial stages as a strength coach. You're getting your butt kicked and you're trying to build a program and you're like, damn, nobody wants to work with me. And I still go through that stuff today. And it's crazy. So I'm excited to chat with you guys, learn from you guys, hear what you got going on, answer questions. Stuff you said about my youth, Jim, I think you and I are about the same age.
Yep.
The talk about like fighting in the street was more like getting beat up in the neighborhood.
Right.
And, I had this conversation with athletes last week. As I said, you guys have a strength coach. We're teaching you how to train. You're training for sport. I said, but that's different than how I grew up. I started training because I was getting beat up and bullied. And I ask kids, who stole your lunch recently? Who said they're going to find you after school and kick your ass? They all said nobody. And I said, yeah, so you have no threat. What happens if you lose, this track meet, or you don't even place or you're not the starter? Nothing. And so those kind of like that lack of threat, I think, it doesn't inspire people to really work hard. So real cool. Also, Jim, your story, that's how my buddy started Spartan Race, was he was working on Wall Street. And he's like, man, the more I was in this business, the more unhealthy I became. He's like, the way I made more money was I had more dinner meetings. He's like, before you know it, you're having 3 dinners in a night. And he said that and coming across somebody who was crazy fit in his apartment complex, Joe DeSen, he said the power went out and some guy was like climbing the stairs with dumbbells. And he said he was ripped. And he was getting ready for one of those early days adventure races. And he said that inspired me. He's like, that changed my life. But so interesting to hear parallel backgrounds, but we're from, far, 12-hour drive for me to get to Indiana.
Yeah. It's always interesting to find out what shapes people's psyche. It's probably one of my favorite things. If you can figure that out, man, not that I'm great at it, but if you can figure it out, then you can find the root cause of things and then the buttons to push. And I agree. Like I was out of shape, fat, 300 pounds fat, I'm out of breath playing catch with my son Jack. And I made sure that my German Shepherd was really well trained, so that if the ball went poorly, I can get the dog to go get the ball for me, so I didn't have to. And then one day I asked Jack, "Hey, what are you going to be when you get older?" He said, "I want to work on being an athlete." I go, I always thought, yeah, so did I, but I let that whole piece of my life drift away for a lot of reasons. And when my son says that, and I'm manipulating myself so I can be less physical, you have sometimes these epiphanies, these drunk bottom out moments where you're like, man, fuck that shit. A kid wants this, and how can I help? Right. So I get that. So one of the first questions is, why build stronger people for you?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to preface this with an apology, because sometimes one question is asked and it's like a
Yeah,
20-minute answer.
sure.
So,
It's broad too, broad question.
right. Well, I love the question. I love the story with your son. You and I grew up in the, I'd say we're children of the 80s,
Mm,
where I don't recall, I mean, there were strength and conditioning coaches, but very rare. Ironically, in Indiana, my buddy Mark Garrett said when he was in high school in the mid 80s, there was a full-time strength coach at his high school. But who did I know from back then? Dr. Ken Leisner was a strength coach. The college football teams had strength coaches. And here we are, 2024, sport coaches are still opposing strength training. It's absolutely crazy. So
mm-hmm.
why do we build stronger people? For me, it started with me. Strength training saved my life. And I didn't start with lifting weights. I simply started with push-ups. And I clearly remember, as if it was yesterday, but I was I feel like it was the summer before seventh grade. One summer night, our neighborhood was very alive. There was tons of kids my age, plus or minus 2 years. So we were outside all day, all night. And one night on, the middle of July, we were arm wrestling on the hood of cars. And I lost every arm wrestling match. And I mean, there was a lot of arm wrestling matches. And I didn't win at all. And it was an embarrassment. And so I remember always having to get home at 10 p.m. My dad was very strict about it. I got home at 10 p.m. And as I was running home, and by the way, running was a mode of transportation. Running wasn't training for anything. It was just a mode of transportation. I remember going home like embarrassed, and I get home and I go upstairs to my room and I turn on the lights, and I had this little voice inside of me that said, when you could do 20 push-ups, you'll win arm wrestling matches. And so I said, let's see how many I can do. And I failed on the third rep. So I did 2.5 reps, but I don't count half reps, so it's 2. And I said, all right, I'll add 1 rep a day. And in 3 weeks, I'll have done 20 reps. So the next morning, I did 3 reps. And then in the afternoon, I remember thinking to myself, why would I wait for tomorrow to do 4? I'm going to do 4 right now. So I started doing a set of push-ups in the morning, then 1 more rep in the afternoon, 5 reps, 1 more at night, 6, 7, 8, 9. And before you knew it, in 1 week, I was doing 20 push-ups. And I don't even recall where that went with arm wrestling or any of that stuff. But by doing push-ups on the regular, I just remember having more confidence. And in
Mm-hmm.
my neighborhood and in my school, there was a lot of guys that would mess with you if they were just stronger and more physical. And so the end of 8th grade, I remember I started lifting weights. My older brother was big into training, but he would read the bodybuilding magazines. That's really all that was available. And he would run. We had a Doberman. He would run 3 times a day with the Doberman. And he kind of got me out of soccer, got me into focus on wrestling. But it was the bodybuilding that changed my confidence and always put me in a better mood. And when I would go to the gym, I was happy. When I was at the gym, not even working out, just doing my homework at the front desk, I would be able to ask the bigger guys questions when they came to get their protein shake. And so I learned that exercise, putting on muscle, getting stronger, seeing physical results, experiencing the feeling of the pump and the confidence building. I wanted to share that with other people as soon as I started, getting into college. So my first training job, I worked in a hospital fitness center, and it was like near the tail end of age 19. I was almost 20, and that was the beginning of me training people. So why build stronger people? You said it before we recorded, Jim, that your lack of physical fitness, essentially, you were not the best father you could be. You were not the best influence on your kids that you could be. And
Mhm.
so when parents ask me, hey, how do I get my kid to start doing push-ups or any kind of exercise, I always tell them, you must model it. You have to lead. And so I haven't really found anything negative that comes from becoming stronger. And honestly, I mentioned Joe DeSena. When we start digging further, people who do hard shit, when you challenge yourself physically, it boosts you mentally. I think it's pretty much impossible to separate the physical from the mental. There's always a mental component in the physical. And I think that like people who don't do hard things, they have a different frame of reference, right? Like the littlest thing bothers them, right? Joe DeSena will be like, I'm on the airplane and we don't have internet and people are having meltdowns. And he's like, I just do burpees in the aisle. Well, I think when you do hard shit, you're just unfazed by life's challenges. And so I said to my son the other day, I don't even know how the conversation came up about like things that stop people. And I told him about my dad. When my dad was laid off by this company, he's an engineer and worked for medical manufacturing companies. He got laid off. I remember coming home. I had a half day at school. I came home and I saw him with a briefcase open on the table, and he's on the phone and he's already making plans. Whereas I've seen and know people who get laid off today who go unemployment for the max. And I'm like, I don't think my dad knew there was unemployment. He probably didn't want the unemployment. And so I was telling him, my father from Romania, his family went to Israel. I think he was like 11, 12, maybe 13 when my dad was in the military. And so when he had this new business of his, it was in a very bad area in New Jersey, inner city, one of the murder capitals of New Jersey. He had to fire one of I think she was like the secretary. So this secretary's fiance is like threatening my father's life. And, most people would be like, I'm not going to go to work. I'm going to get this sorted with the cops. My dad just got a concealed and carry permit and just continues going to work. And why? My dad escapes, him and his family escape communism. He comes to Israel. He works on a kibbutz. You go to a kibbutz, and how do you get your meals? You work. You have to work to be able to get your food. Then he's in the military. Then he's an immigrant in America. He went through so much hard shit that like a guy saying he's going to kill him, he's just like, people have shot at me when I was in the army. I'm not afraid. He just went straight to his business. And I just think of how normal people who don't do hard things, if the wind blows 5 degrees the wrong way, that's it. Everything's over. My world is ending. And that's why I continue to train hard, because it makes me resilient. Life has so many ups and downs. You working, in banking, you see what has happened to the economy. The cost of living, it's like triple what it once was. It's stressful. It's
Mhm.
stressful to feel like, man, I got to make more money. I got to provide. And I think if I didn't have the physical background of consistently going through tough things, I would be, falling apart. And that's why I feel everybody, whether they're our age, but especially our youth, wow, our youth need to get back to, as JFK said, daily vigorous exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, you're right. That's a long answer. And I took,
I struggle to be concise.
There's a number of points that you illustrated that I absolutely love. One, with the push-ups right off the bat, we're big on the book Atomic Habits, and if you want to improve, you just it goes through on how do you build habits. And so you started off with a habit, and then you measured it, and then you can't really improve the habit until you have it. So you have the habit, and then you're measuring it, so you're quickly improving there, and then you saw results. Then you go on to say that confidence comes from reps. That I've done hard things, I've had hard reps, so more confidence comes along. And you're right that you'll see some younger folks that they're riddled with anxiety because they've only had really, really small reps. So they don't have the mental background that, hey, man, I've done these things. That's why they make boot camp hard. That's why they make buds hard, because they want to make sure that you have a reference point that you can look back on and not be phased. You point out about your parents. My grandfather was in North Africa, Sicily, and D-Day +6 during World War II in the infantry. And one of the stories he told me later after he was back and obviously had his kids and then me, I asked him about the war, and he didn't really talk about it very much. But one of the things he said that, hey, Jim, I was injured. I said, I didn't know that. Really? Where? And he goes, in my face. And I go, really? You can't tell. Well, there was some explosion went off. There was some shrapnel, hit him in the face. And they had like a makeshift tent out there in the field as their operating room. So they're performing surgery on his face because his mouth is kind of like pulled like over here, right? And so they had to cut it up and fix it. And to this day, you wouldn't know the difference. And so when he comes to and he's talking to the doc afterwards, post-op, he goes, "Hey doc, how did it go?" He goes, "Man, by the book." My grandfather's like, "Great, that's great news." And the doc goes, "No, literally, I've never done this. I had the book opened up, and I had to figure out what I was doing." And he's like, "Okay, great." Fast forward, survives that, and he becomes a barber on the east side in Cleveland, where I grew up. And, goes through the 60s, wears long hair in the 70s. And so I was born in the early 70s. And then I would ask him when I was younger, I said, "Well, what's life? You get nervous running your own barbershop. You got 5 or 6 chairs. It seems like it's busy." I never seen you worked up, whether it's busy or not. And he said, "Whether I'm making a lot of money or not a lot of money, I'm not getting my face shot off. So what do I really need to be worried about?"
Frame of reference changes the frame of,
Right. So I love it when my favorite PR or goal with an athlete in the gym is not a big back squat, but that's pretty high up there. It's the mental PR that when I say, "Hey, here's what we're doing next today," or they see the program on the board, or if I adjust it right in the middle, they're unfazed and they're just like, "All right, next obstacle." So when they get to that point where they don't care, they start thinking critically, how can I attack the next piece? I'm like, my job's pretty close to done. Like mentally, you're pretty much there where you don't care. You're just pushing. All we have to do now is tweak. Man, you're at that last piece, and it's so fun. And if I can get that mental PR, like you just said, where I have this frame of reference where I'm not really worried, that's like for me the mecca of training athletes. And you guys do it better than so many others.
Yeah, I think we're doing a really good job. We're always trying to get better. The underground strength gym started so long ago that kids I once trained now have their own children. They're married with kids, and I'll hear from their parents, or they'll reach out to me 10, 15 years later, or they'll review something on LinkedIn, and they'll say it was because of those hard workouts that I stayed with. Kids were staying for years and years. They're like, that gave me the foundation to really try to excel in my academics and my internship during college. It helped me stand out. And it's just a consistent reminder that hard work, it's hard to measure. Like, what is hard? But you know it when you see it. And I believe in training today, and Lucas could probably speak to this even more because he's interned, I don't know how many years ago, but at least somewhat recently at the college level. I've said there's just too much technology. you're testing and measuring everything, and you've gotten away from just fucking working. And I was just at the NSCA state clinic, and it was so much like measuring and this and that. You know, some people are into that, and we need those kind of coaches who have that eye and that mind. But I love to, I love it, but I believe through experience, not because it's just some false belief. Athletes need to do a lot of grunt work because it makes them durable. Now I'm seeing athletes injured before the first game of the season. They're falling apart from preseason, from like first 2 weeks of practice. Like they can't handle, football install. Ankles are all rolled. We're tearing ACLs. We're dislocating shoulders because we fell down. I mean, in the 80s, we fell down all the time on cement. And so what does it show? Like all this advanced training, and we still have tons of athletes who can't do a pull-up, not pull-ups. Or I'll tell you, if I bring in the freshmen, the summer before freshmen for football, you get like 40-something kids to play football. We line them up, 20 on each side, and we start counting out push-ups. Many, I'd say 50 to 60, 7% can't do one push-up. And it's like, guys, you knew you're entering a sport where you're smashing into people, and how do you get off the ground? Why are you not doing push-ups on your own? And it's got to start at home. The school isn't going to save you. Look, I'm a local strength coach, but it helps if you show up and can do 10 push-ups, 20 push-ups. And so that is a missing component in today's youth. So, Lucas, when were you at the two colleges? What years?
So I interned at Purdue when I was there at 2018. I was going into my senior year of college. And then right after my senior year of college, I moved on up to the University of Maryland, where I interned with their football program for about a year.
So was Aaron Wellman at Purdue, or he was at Indiana? Who was at Purdue?
Aaron Wellman Aaron Wellman's at Indiana now. The head strength and conditioning coach at Purdue at the time was Justin Lovett.
Okay, I know that name.
Yep.
And then when you went to Maryland, why am I forgetting his name? He's been there for a bit. Who's
Ryan Davis?
Ryan's been there for a bit.
Yep.
So
Ryan Davis, the head strength coach.
Yep. I know Ryan. I don't know Justin as much, but I see Ryan like it's work. You're working. And so, I think that's a missing component in the football and combative sports. I see a lot of clean, squats, sprints, jumps, but I don't see as many calisthenics. I don't see a whole lot of carrying. I have a great old VHS tape. We put him on. I got somebody to convert him of Dr. Ken when he was helping Mike Gentry at Virginia Tech. And they did something called the Ironman Challenge. And the Ironman Challenge is just, it's the 80s because, Jim, if you recall, the station wagons had like the wood panel on the side.
Yes.
They're pushing station wagons. They're sprinting stadium stairs with weight vests. They're doing farmer walks, tire flips. They did this awesome drill. They called it like the swamp carry. It was multiple crash mats. And on one side was different objects for them to carry. There were the tackling dummies, sandbags. So the football player would have to grab 2 sandbags and run across those crash mats. And when you're doing that, your legs are pushing into those mats. I actually did a drill similar to that when I was in college with my gymnastics teacher who was a wrestler. So they run the sandbags across, run back, drag the tackling dummy across, run back. And it was just grunt drills. And I have a friend that actually played at Virginia Tech under Coach Gentry. And he's like, the Ironman Challenge still exists. And he's like, when you win the Ironman Challenge, you get a 300-pound anvil. So even when you win, the reward is actually more work. You have to carry the anvil.
Dang.
So, yes. And
that's awesome.
It is
what
awesome.
Gift.
What a gift. I'll have to email you later those videos. I'll send it to you guys. But to me, that needs to at least be some of an aspect of strength training for athletes.
I'm kind of curious. Do you think with the way strength and conditioning is going now, with everything is record, rank, publish, everything's posted on social media, everything is so data driven. You can't make a program better without having data. I mean, I think most people would probably agree on that, but like, do you think that has kind of hindered the strength and conditioning field just because everything is so based on a number, and then the test and the test becomes the goal, and
it could certainly sway the coach. For example, let's say we're using one of the force plates. Now we're constantly trying to improve the result of the force plate. Whereas I'm not going to mention the force plate, but when I was at one of the D1 universities, our best guys tested poorly on the force plate. Why? Because they had an extreme attribute. One guy was too powerful and he needed to raise up his, strength and this and that. But that's what he thrived on, not just physically, but mentally, to the point where, on a Sunday he would, one of the best wrestlers who went on to become a two-time national champ, he said to me, Coach, can we work on our fast twitch muscles tomorrow? So I made sure during the warm-up we segued into jumps and plyo push-ups. And when we would do box squats, he actually, he felt better when we did more of a dynamic effort. But we could do max effort weighted pull-ups. He would do weighted pull-ups with 90 pounds, which was 80 or 80% of his body weight. And then here would be my question, Lucas, is what if there's no social media? Would you actually do that exercise? Sometimes I think coaches are posting things that I'm like, I would fucking never do that thing. Or you're training two guys. Where's the rest of the team? Are you only doing these small groups so you could, boost social media? And then if we look at a technical aspect, you're looking at the velocity, you're tracking velocity, and you're looking at bar speed. What if the movement is done incorrectly or doesn't have a full range of motion, or the back is in a bad position, but he or she moved the bar faster? Is that considered a win? In my opinion, it's not. And so you're so busy looking. Now, the benefit and the positive to it is this younger generation that's in there. And you look, how old are you, Lucas?
28.
You're 28. So the guys in college are, 18, 19. Well, some of them with the recent COVID years and all that shit could have been 25, but they were kind of born and bred with technology. So it makes sense for them to look at, what is the bar speed, and somebody on the other side of the weight room, had 0.6 meters per second. Now I'm going to get it to, I'm going to move faster. And so that makes sense to them. So I like technology to teach kids to compete, because that could be a missing link. But I think that sometimes the coaches get so caught up in that the program is just way too perfect. And then I look at the sport like a violent sport like football, wrestling, even girls soccer. Every time I watch our girls high school soccer team play, I go back and all I think about is how we need to get stronger and kind of build durability, because these girls are somebody kicks a ball more than half a soccer field and the girls are running to head the ball. So I'm not thinking, what is the velocity when they squat? What is the bar speed? I'm thinking strengthening their back and their traps, or there's kind of like a loose ball and the girls just smash into each other. Or when they're kind of on the sideline, you see them pushing each other. I look at, last week I saw girls lacrosse playing, and I was, I'm very consistent with, after you're done with, a certain jump, I have them stick the landing, hold it for 3 seconds. I do some slow eccentrics. Oh, now we know why. Because when I was watching you, your opponent put the brakes on and cut. You could not put the brakes on, and you need to be a better listener for me. And I can't really measure that, but it's the art of coaching. You got to pick it up with your eyes. And so, there's the good and bad with everything. Were the simpler times better? Probably not, but I think we're at a place definitely where we are overcoaching a lot of things. And I'm seeing a lot of problems physically that I didn't see, I'd say, I don't know when the iPhone became popular, 2012. Like pre-2012, I wrote an article on this at Simply Faster. I didn't see athletes with like all these tight ankles who couldn't do a proper squat. I just didn't see all these like simple issues that now we're like, you got to become a mobility expert to fix these kids. So today I trained high school wrestlers, and I got kids that can barely do a bodyweight squat because their ankles and hips are too tight. And it's like, that was not an issue before 2010. And leading up to 2010, I had trained thousands of athletes already, and I was never seeing these issues.
I would be willing to guess is that there's kids are not as active doing things outside of their sport. 'Cause I remember, you would go to practice, or, your day you didn't go do your sport. You didn't go to school and just do your sport. You were doing things outside or whatever you were doing. You're always moving around, going and doing stuff and being involved with other things outside of your sport.
Yes.
Outside. And I agree with you when it comes to the ankles and hips, because I feel like I'm always having to talk to guys about ankles and hips. It's just, I'm glad someone else is saying it and seeing it, because I feel like it's just me, and it makes me wonder, is it me? Is it just me that has to deal with ankles and hips, or is it just more of a problem? So I'm glad you said that.
Right. Or are you just picking up on it because you're smarter now, you're more aware of it? And listen, it's interesting. Sometimes a big name person has to announce it. Like I saw Kelly Starrett mentioned Derek Hansen, who is a sprint coach. He consults with NFL and Olympians, and he's talking about like the lack of GPP. And I'm like, K-Star, I've been talking about that for over a decade. And you mentioned the activities. I'll remember not long ago, like two brothers. One brother didn't show up. I go, "Where's your brother?" He mowed the lawn. He's exhausted. How big is your lawn? Like, it's like you're exhausted after mowing the lawn. And so all those, being outside, kids, what Kelly Starrett stated on his Instagram is his daughter, I think his daughter does water polo. They're so busy running to all these practices that they're not enough time to do proper, strength and conditioning, or at least, like a regular session. I found myself the past few years telling parents, hey, come in 30 minutes once a week. I mean, I can't believe that, but it pays dividends. It pays off, but that's what they have available. 30 minutes once a week. That's insane.
I like when you talked about kind of having that coaching eye, and it just, even today we're in kind of a peak period with our training at the school, and we got a kid, and I have zero technology, and I'm fine with that. But when I'm coaching a kid today, a football player, and he's really, really improved this past semester over this past year, and he started the year off 335 squat, and he's over 405 now. And so he's been working with heavier weights than he's had in the past, and it's kind of new to him. And with this peak period right now, we're doing obviously low volume, and so he's moving this weight, and he got like 365 on the bar, and I'm watching him behind him, and he's moving it well, good depth, good speed. And I'm asking him, like, so how'd that feel? Tell me how that felt. And he's like, it felt good, felt fast. It really didn't, think it was like we're around the 90% range. And he's, I think that part where you're communicating with the athlete, you're watching the athlete, and you're getting information from them, and they're telling you, yeah, I feel great. If it feels fast, I think it's probably fast enough. And if it looks good, if it looks fast, and if it's good for them, and the athlete is telling you it feels good and fast, it's probably moving fast enough.
I've had this conversation with guys who coach in the NFL, guys who've been around for a while, and they're like, I don't need, a bar speed tracker. They're like, I could see it, but that's us. You're 28. I'm having this conversation with a guy who's in his mid 50s, guys that are in their mid 50s who have been coaching since probably their early 20s, so over 30 years. Now, an athlete might think they're doing it fast, and that's where you want to show them, use the technology. Hey, man, listen, it's actually not. Or, how I'll use technology. Today I had to record many squats because they're like, I feel like I'm getting low enough. All right, you're getting this next set, I'll record you. Look where you're stopping. You're halfway down or you're still above parallel. You have to go lighter. They think they feel it, but they're so out of touch with their body, either because they're inexperienced and or everything is coached so much. And so I'll demonstrate something like this. Guys, watch me. I'm closing my eyes. Right now I'm in a half squat. Right now I'm parallel. Right now I'm below parallel. Now watch. My knees are caved in. My back is round. Now my back is flat. It's just kinesthetic awareness. They don't have that kinesthetic awareness. And look, I could rant. Phys ed sucks. This sucks. That sucks. We have to teach them all of that. So now when I look at strength and conditioning, like your podcast title is kind of the end result of what we want is we must build athletes. We need athleticism. What is athleticism? My buddy John Wellborn with Power Athlete, he has a definition, but before he was defining it, he would say, you know what it is when you see it. Yeah, you could see an athlete who is athletic. And by the way, I've had some very successful wrestlers who were not athletic, but they were very good at the wrestling skill. They had like a specific kind of strength, maybe good isometric strength, or they were very explosive, but you try to play basketball with them, no good. Handball against the wall, no good. But when I would look at any old training books or get videos of Russian athletes, you would often see Russian athletes playing multiple sports before they did their sport. My daughter plays tennis, and many of the tennis coaches are Russian. And so I would notice, even when she was young, they would play like a small ball soccer. I think that might be futsal. I'm not sure. But they would do it on one half of the tennis court. Why? Change of direction, forwards, backwards, mirroring somebody, playing defense, playing offense. They were making them athletic. And today, I think of my son playing baseball. All of his teams never did like dynamic warm-ups. They did no push-ups leading all the way up to 8th grade. 8th grade, the kids started leading it. Maybe when he was in like 3rd or 4th grade, there was a coach that would have him do like skipping, karaoke, but nobody did push-ups. If I was training baseball players, I'd have a few, 5-pound medicine balls to throw against the wall, to throw for distance on the field. We would lunge, we would do push-ups, we would buddy carry, we would bear crawl, which improves ankle mobility and foot strength. We would do all kinds of hand walking, but nobody did any of that. They would just go out and like stretch, and then they would go and play. And I was like, man, you want to build a better baseball player? Implement athleticism, and they will become better at baseball.
Man, a lot of good things there. It's too many for me to even write down to get them all. You're absolutely right. We had Dr. Klutwijk on. He was the main knee surgeon for the Colts, and he's
I got to hear it. It's on YouTube, right?
Yeah, and he's
okay.
He'll be at our summit this summer in June, and he's international expert on the board for ACLs, and he's like, kids aren't athletic, their core is weak, their hamstring and butts are weak, especially with females in their Q angles, but a lot more ACL players. And then
I've seen so many
right?
ACL. I've been at it for a bit, and I've never, this fall, guys, I saw more injuries in one season than in the 4 years combined at my high school. And so I just put together a simple Google sheet, and I apologize for interrupting, Jim.
No problem.
I just wanted to get this point because I'll forget it. All I did was next to the person's name, so if it said Lucas, Jim, it said your sport, and then there was a column for trained in the off season, trained preseason, trained in season. So it was a yes, no, or barely. And all of the injuries came from a lot of no, barely. Barely trained in season, did not train off season. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist. And then I would have loved to ask this doctor, I'm seeing kids, their rehab must suck because 6, 7, 8 months later, they can't do a bodyweight walking lunge.
Right.
I don't know what's going on in some physical therapy clinics, but they must be treating them as if they're senior citizens when they're 15-year-olds.
Right. The body's so much more resilient, especially when you're younger. I could tell you what it's not resilient is when you're almost 50, right? Not nearly as resilient.
That's right.
And he talks about that. You need to have these kids stronger so they can then be dynamic. It's still the basic physics, right? And if you're going to do something very powerful and you're not strong enough to control your body, obviously those ligaments and tendons are going to be on too much duress for you to handle. When I started getting healthier and in better shape, I was doing this group training and then I added in CrossFit. And I was getting more well-rounded, a lot of GPP, right? Doing a little bit of everything. And at some point I wanted to get stronger because I was just so far behind. A basic 135 clean was heavy it wouldn't be that heavy if I had a 500 deadlift, right? So I want to learn how to get stronger. So it was your encyclopedia book and Wendler's 531. And I'm like, I think between these two things, I'm going to be okay. And so I was just implementing the basics on my own and then in my garage. And then for the first 2-3 years at my CrossFit gym, it's like 531 in basics. And one of the first things I was thrilled to buy was like I bought a bunch of sleds, and people are like, well, why that? Why not just a barbell? I'm like, when you're moving, you're under all this time under tension, but your body has to handle the load while you're moving.
I'm so glad you did that.
And it's going to just pay a big difference. I don't have the master's in kinesiology, but I got to believe you're pushing weight for a long time, it's just going to be better for you. And then years later, I learned all the what force behind that, but it's true. And today I was just training these kids that are playing in college, and I go, all right, the last 4 weeks we did 10-minute EMOM of 30 seconds of work, 30 seconds of break of sled drags, and I make it competitive. You don't want to be last. So there's that mental component. But this week I said I'm switching it up. It's just going to be carries. So everybody's going to grab some 53 kettlebells, a pair, and I want to see who gets the most distance over these 10 minutes. And they're like, this isn't really training. This isn't really, us getting ready for our sport. I said, yes, it is. And here's why. It
makes you durable
under duress.
Look, guys, these kids are breaking from practice, which means they're unprepared. Why are they unprepared? The training is too specific and it's actually ineffective. And it's important for me to give credit. In the early 2000s, I purchased, it may have been from the Jim Jones website. It may have even been CrossFit. But they had a Dan John VHS tape. Maybe it was a DVD. And Dan John was just doing sleds, carries, and my early conversations with Louis Simmons were all about GPP. Sled carry, sled drag for time, different carries for time, med ball slams for 5 minutes nonstop. And by the way, you guys are not far from Ohio. You should do a visit. You should get there. You've been there. I also got to put you in touch with my buddy Jeremy. He's in Indiana and Ohio. Jeremy Hartman. So he trains a lot of Hartman Performance.
Yeah.
He trains a lot of powerlifters, but he also trains athletes. And we talk about this stuff all the time. And he's got high-level athletes. Like he had guys just do the Olympic trials out in Penn State in wrestling. So he's developing these powerful, strong, durable
monsters
athletes. And I'm excited to listen to that podcast with your doctor friend because, and by the way, I know not every physical therapist is treating these kids in this kind of,
Sure.
fragile snowflake manner. But from what I'm seeing, it's a lot of them. When I get my kids to a physical therapist, they are also strength coaches. To me, I think that's the ultimate marriage, a PT who is a strength coach, because they do go hand in hand. I learn a lot of my physical therapy stuff from Donnie Thompson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had Hartman was up at our gym a couple times. We had hosted a regionals powerlifting competition at my gym, and then
there you go.
We had a number of Highland Games events too, and he has a bunch of females that are just amazing.
They're killers.
One of the things I take away from listening to your podcast, and you're big on experience, you're big on reading, big on learning, but you're also reading things that are on philosophy, not just super training. And I see a lot of this Bruce Lee quotes, which I love, and he was in your book. And I just pulled up your Instagram recently, and it was just the other day or yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday I came across that.
Learn the art of dying. Learn the art of dying. And all you wrote was, what do you think of this? So I wanted to ask you, you put that out there. And, I tried to think about this before. I want to not just hide behind the question. I want to be able to answer it myself, I guess. And I think for me, learning how the art of dying is, I don't know, right or wrong. I want to live my life to the point where when I'm ready, when it's time for me to die, I'm like, okay, I did what I could. I don't want to be the person that's like, God damn it, why didn't I do this shit? Or if I had another year, or if I were in my 50s or 40s, and then you have to learn how to die well without fear and understand where you're going next and have faith. It was, I think, the second component in my mind, but I didn't really have a good answer, but I want to hear what your answer was.
I'm going to play it. Let's see if I can hold it near the mic, if that would work. I mean, I never heard any of that before. It almost sounds like he's detached. Man, I'd probably have to play it more to have it make sense. Some people had some deep answers. Some people, I feel like they had some surface answers. But he's like, you got to free your ambitious mind. Like, you're so focused on the end result that it might not allow you to perform at your best. And I'm going to try to borrow something from my old high school wrestling coach. He told me this a few years ago. He said, Zach, when you wrestled, we would say, go out there and fucking kill, like kick everybody, everything was so extreme. He said, now I tell kids, go out there, have fun, and score points. I'm like, what? That's what you went. That's how you're doing it now. And he said they don't respond to all this pressure. Now, I've heard of what Penn State does. Penn State wrestling. They've been untouchable for 10 years. It's amazing. It's like, it's an amazing dynasty. And I was speaking with a friend of mine who was a very successful wrestler, who was a national champ and at the Division I level. And he said, they have their own kind of styles of training. He says, but ultimately they just say, now it's in God's hands. And he's like, I think it just takes all the pressure off of you, that it allows you to just do your absolute best. And if you lost, that was God's plan. And when he said that to me, I started trying. I hate the trying. I'm still trying to get better at this. But there's that quote of let go and let God, like that we're just supposed to do our best and then we are exactly where we're supposed to be. And, like we've been talking about training athletes, and I'm in a high school, and sometimes it doesn't go so hot. And I'm like, man, like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Am I supposed to do more, be more? And I think when you just do your best and then you trust that the universe or God, however you want to phrase it, is got you where you're supposed to be. But I want people to understand that that's not an excuse to be lax about, where you are. You should still be striving, right, for more. But I think that, or at least a piece of what Bruce Lee is saying there is free yourself from the ambitious mind. You're so focused on the outcome that it limits your performance. And I would definitely say that is where I was when I was a high school athlete. And so that takes experience. That takes a lot of experience to get to a point where you just trust the work, you trust your abilities, and now you're going to let it rip. That is a high level athlete, in my opinion. And we're seeing some of that at the high school level, by the way. If we speak about wrestling, we're seeing high school kids qualifying or almost qualifying for the Olympics, and they're beating, national champion wrestlers who are 12 years older than them. So, but then on the downside of that, guys, that's like 5% of athletes. There's no top, middle, bottom. There's kind of like this top. It's not even a top 10%. It's like a top 5 to 7%. And then there's just like nothing. It's very strange. When I speak about wrestling, there's a website in my area called Shore Conference. We're in the Jersey Shore. So I look up the matches, and every single match ends in a pin. I mean, there's 14 weight classes. Let's say my team wins 10, your team wins 4. Your guys got 4 pins, we got 10 pins. Like, barely ever do I see a match go for 3 periods. So I started saying, like, fuck this training. Like, I don't even need to add conditioning. If you're wrestling, what more conditioning do I need to add when your matches are lasting a minute and a half or 3 minutes? You need to be just like brutally strong. You need strength that punishes people. And then, when I speak to coaches about it, some of them say kids don't want to fight off their back. Kids have no pride. They might say kids are not embarrassed to lose. I was embarrassed to lose in front of a crowd of hundreds. And then it like pushed me to train harder. So, it's different times. This is, like Lucas, this is where technology should be leveraged, where kids have a different, they value things differently than the older generation. For me, I'll be honest, like, I just love the purity of a lot of things, right? Like with training, I think there's something pure about when Rocky goes to Tough Gym or when he goes to Russia to train. There's something pure about that. There was something pure about me growing up in gyms where we had to deal with the music, the shitty music, but I was able to get mentored by the bigger, stronger guys. I made friends. Who can meet friends at a gym today? Who's going to get mentored? I can't help anybody. You have your AirPods in. You're disconnected. You're locked in, but I miss that. I miss that purity. And, my best workouts happen when my phone is left in my truck and not having to record something for my Instagram. So I miss the purity of these things. And, speaking of all that ACL stuff, Jim, who tore an ACL? What's, you told me you were not in athletics in high school, but you would have known if a kid tore his ACL in your high school. Probably you would see somebody walking around in crutches. Do you remember that happening?
Yeah, it was the kid was playing JV as a freshman and tore his ACL. He's running back, and
One kid.
but he's like,
So you tell me one kid.
yeah, but basically the entire football team, no one else tore ACLs that year.
Well,
They're doing that plus another sport, and
yeah.
we had a strength coach then, and uh, it was just like, yeah, it was just one kid. I was like, oh, well, that must not be
I
a big problem here. But that
I've
was
never
in 91,
seen
92,
right. Yeah, I graduate. When did you graduate high school? 93,
90,
92.
93. Yeah, yep,
Yeah, me too.
93.
So in there was no shoulder surgery, ACL. You know, my older brother had a meniscus repaired in high
Hmm.
school. There was no UCL, you know, Tommy John surgeries. I don't even remember a kids rolling their ankles. I just
Right,
remember no injuries. And
right,
now we see it all
all
the
the time.
time. But why? There's all these speed and agility places. There's strength coaches in every town. And there's, you know, we could come up. So, what is the answer to this? Is it to open more strength and conditioning facilities? No. The answer is do what you're doing, Jim. It starts at home.
Hmm.
The home,
Yeah,
the home, the home base has to be the strongest place for that kid.
it's that our number one asset will always be our culture, and you know, West Side's culture is pretty well renowned, but it looked like to me from what I know about you is like your brother was a big part of your culture. Part of your culture was reading all the muscle and fitness magazines. Like I was real shy about that stuff, and people ask me who's your favorite athlete. I would say Lee Haney, and they're like, well, "Who is that?" Right? Who's
Yes,
Who's Lee Haney?
that was
You
awesome.
know, but honestly, even the movies like the Rockies, everyone loves the Rockies. Everyone loves the guy that was in pain and suffering and came back and just fought and then won.
It's
It's
a
even
hero story.
it's a hero story, and why not? Like Joe Rogan says, live. You're the hero in your life in your own movie. So go out and live that way. There has to be this choice, and I tell people that pressure. You mentioned pressure is a gift. If you can handle pressure, it's a gift. I have to fabricate. Like Lucas lived in his car so he can have these GAs jobs in college. He lived in his car. Like that's pain. So now, is he really worried about anything else? No, he has a warm place to stay. My face isn't getting shot off, right? So this pressure is a gift, and when they don't have that, or like Dave Tate's logo is that guy on the back squat, and his mantra is under the bar. There's fear under the bar. Now you handle fear. You're handling life. You're good to go. Are you worried about a divorce? Yeah, it's not going to be great, but you can handle it. Big illness, uh, lose your job. It's just what's next. That's why that pressure, when you handle it, it's such a gift, and it's painful. You inflict it on your own kids, you inflict it on the members at the gym, but it's like, do you understand that I'm the only one that you're going to see today that's going to give a shit enough about you to put you in pain so you're better tomorrow? Everyone
Yeah,
else is
well,
going to everyone else is going to say, take this easier road, and I'm going to say, please take the harder road because you'll be better tomorrow. And at some point, I'm going to be dead and gone, and all I have left is that you can handle things better now because we worked together. That's it.
you know, the mentioned culture. You know, the culture at the underground, my private facility, is much more intense and different than at my high school. You know, at my high school, I don't lead the culture because I am kind of wrestling with the sport coach who is setting or not setting the standard, who is getting the kids to show up or never checks in and doesn't care if the kids show up. And so there's things getting pulled in many directions. Whereas at the underground, we are on the same bus and we're driving in the same to the same place, and you know our destination is victory and success, and not necessarily victory by points on the board, but victory in areas of our life. And you know, mentioned Lucas sleeping in his car. When I first did certifications, there was always a guy that would sleep in the car.
Yep.
And then, of course, somebody said, "Hey, man, you could just sleep on my hotel floor." And guys would fly from overseas. They were so hungry to learn, and they'd say, "I just had enough money to buy the plane ticket and rent a car, but not enough money also for the hotel." And those guys were fucking hungry and they fucking wanted to learn. And I'll never forget when it hit me is I did a certification in Florida, and I was in a neighboring town, and a gym owner had, X number of coaches, and he had reached out to me, and I said, "Oh, I'm being hosted at this place, and would love, if you get your coaches to sign up, we have a package discount." And he's like, "Well, let me know when you're in my area." And I'm like, "I am in your area." And then the real gist was he didn't want to pay. He only wanted to host so he could do it for free. And he didn't want to, in his area was like 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away. Then I fly to Texas, Austin, same thing. Coaches would not come to Austin if they lived in Houston, where they could just drive there. And that's where I started coming up with the mantra, good enough is the death of greatness. And it is very rare, I started saying, that you will find convenience and excellence on the same road. To achieve excellence, there will be many inconveniences. But if you think everything's going to be smooth sailing, fall in your lap, schedule-wise, location-wise, you are wrong. And just, by the way, Lucas doing that as a strength coach, there's stories of that with MMA fighters who fucking slept on the floor of their gym because they didn't have a place. There's movie stars who did that. Greg Panora lived in his car before he became a world champion powerlifter. And a lot of people might say, who the fuck cares about world champion in powerlifting? It's not that, he cared. It's not that he wanted the acceptance or the admiration of others. A lot of times strength training is kind of like you're squashing your own demons, whatever those demons are. And, a lot of people are just not willing to experience pain, or discomfort. So for me, sometimes I say wrestling taught me how to do that. But the reality is my wrestling coaches taught me how to do that. If I had shitty coaches, they could have taught me nothing. Seeing my father and his work ethic, and my mom and her work ethic, and knowing the story of my grandparents, that is what taught me work ethic. And I still, want to live up to all of them. So it's, you need great coaches to learn these things, right? It's not the sport so much that teaches it to you. It's your coach. Again, it could be the greatest sport, whatever that sport is. But if your coaches don't care and don't teach you these lessons, you'll never learn them.
True. Athletes got to meet you halfway, but not even. I say the coach has got to be past that halfway point, 60, 65%. But the athletes can't just be at 5%. They do need to, meet you halfway. But the coach is
they need accountability, or they need ownership. And listen, I get it. Like a young kid, they don't know why is sports so important. They're 13. They don't really, it's not like some thing that they're really looking at. And again, right, 6 or 7% of high school kids compete in college, and then many of those 6 or 7% quit in college. So of course the coach is more hyped up and wants it a little bit more, but as they get older and more mature, we look for them to take more ownership over the nutrition, the consistency, the commitment, the listening, and the coachability. And so it must be a relationship where I'm seeing them take ownership, but I don't have those expectations. I have them a little bit for our middle school athletes. I tell them, you're in middle school, but you're here, and I expect you to be different. I don't want you to be like the other quote unquote normal kids.
Right. When I talk, it gets me, personally just excited hanging out with people that are trying to make an impact and push others, especially athletes, to improve. And selfishly, with basically all my family's out of town this week, I could talk until midnight, 1 in the morning about all this stuff. But I also know that we want to stop around 9 tonight because you be respectful of you and your family. So if you just another quick minute, I'm going to run through these rapid fire questions, and it won't take long. But when you're training by yourself, is something you typically listen to or no?
Yeah, I have a couple different playlists on Spotify. Sometimes I will search best workout playlist, best rock playlist, and I'm like, these suck. So I go back. I have to go back to my playlist. So I have Underground Strength Gym playlist, Underground Strength Gym 2 playlist. So it's rock from the 90s, and then it's stuff like Disturbed, Metallica, Pantera, Rage Against the Machine, sometimes some 80s Def Leppard in there. Some 90s rap is in there as well. I've got I could share with you the link to all the playlists. We've got Underground Strength Gym rap. Sometimes I listen to country, but like when I'm training legs, I'm usually going into more of a darker place. Not that I'm like lifting crazy heavy like I once did, but I still need to have a little bit of anger before I'm squatting. And, if I'm like deadlifting, then I might listen to, I got to pull this one up. Oh, dang. Crap. Of course let's see. Here we go. I'll have to look it up. I'll listen to some pretty heavy shit when when I'm deadlifting and like pulling PRs. AC/DC sometimes. DMX always good. Yeah, I'm going through some stuff, some old school GNR, Guns N' Roses. So I like stuff that gets you going.
Awesome.
Rocky never goes old. It never goes old. It's crazy. From the mid 80s, I'm still fired up from it since the mid 80s. That's insane.
That final fight scene in the first movie doesn't take a lot of time in terms of the film. It's like 6 minutes or 8 minutes, and then there's about 3 minutes where you start skipping through all these rounds, and that song, that montage that comes on is that bell that's dinging, right? And that's David Goggins' favorite little song and musical. If you listen to him, when he did that 24 hours of pull-ups, he just had that one song, which is like 3 minutes long, on repeat for 24 hours. The same song as he was doing.
I have a friend that beat his pull-up record, and he's a very under-the-radar guy. He just sold his gym. He's a very smart businessman, lives in Colorado, and he beat his pull-up record, and he just,
amazing.
Joe Hashi is his name. You could follow him on Instagram.
What's a bucket list adventure that you haven't been on yet? Maybe you and your wife would want to go.
Yeah, I don't know if my wife would be up for this, but I would like to be in an RV. I told my son we would actually do this and travel cross country or up and down the coast and do things like fishing, hunting, finding old school gyms. Like, to me, such a, if you heard the song Simple Man from Skynyrd, like that would be, to me, just great. Like, I love spending time with family. Simple stuff. So that to me would be the best. Yeah. I don't have the driving stamina I used to. I remember when I was younger, like, I'll drive to Florida straight through. Now after like 4 hours, I'm like, Jesus, give me coffee.
Favorite sports movie? Or favorite one or two?
Yeah, well, of course I love the Rocky films. They get me fired up. There's a movie based on Bruce Lee called Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. Mm-hmm. That is awesome. I love the Rocky films. To me, they're not so much about sport; they're about life. And I can't remember. Do you have another movie question? Because if not, I have to share with you some of my favorite movies.
I thought you might say Vision Quest, being a wrestling guy. Yeah, I wanted Shoot to win that match. Honestly,
really, that's crazy.
Because he just seemed like he was just a machine like the other guy and was driven and vicious. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of want him to win. And
right. But I think that's not what happened. That is kind of like that is the enigma of sports, is like, you're the best, but for how long? There's always, we watch Olympic champions losing in many sports, but of course we see it in wrestling and these other sports. But that is the enigma, is like, you can never just settle and think that's it, I'm at the top. Conor McGregor has certainly said that. He's like, you start to slip a little bit. you eat this little bit of food, or you don't disappear. I remember love those stories of boxers who would go to these training camps in the mountains to do their training, just free of distractions, which is what Rocky did when he was training against Drago. He had to leave his wife and son. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, I don't like going away for a weekend and being away from my family, but the Rocky films are great. And of course, I'm a big Sylvester Stallone fan, so I love Rambo First Blood is really one of my favorite movies. He's coming out with Rambo New Blood, which I can't believe it. And I'll have
Last
to watch.
Blood was going to be the last one.
Right, I just saw a trailer, Rambo New Blood. I can't believe it. But I tell you what movie I really love. I love a good revenge movie. So I love The Equalizer, the first one. He just kicks the shit out of everybody. And it was on last night. And I was like, man, before I go to bed, I have to watch him like kill everybody in the bar before I can go to sleep. So I love movies where there is, a hero story or somebody fighting for good, or it is a revenge movie. So I love a lot of these military movies. And my wife thinks I'm crazy that I always have to watch like violent movies. Maybe I am crazy. Could be.
The book Without Remorse is way better than the movie, and typically the books are. But Tom Clancy's book Without Remorse, this guy is wronged, and for the next 1,000 pages, he gets right.
I think. Did they do a movie on that? What's it?
They did. Yeah, Michael B. Is in the lead role.
The guy that's all better. Ripped, right? The black dude. Yeah. That was a good movie.
From Creed.
It didn't have a lot of. It didn't have a lot of good reviews. I don't know what's wrong with those people. I thought it was great.
The other one, old one, is The Count of Monte Cristo, and it's an old one by Dumas, right? Okay. Who wrote The Three Musketeers. Anyways, that book is solely about revenge.
I've never read it, and of course, I've heard about it since I was a kid.
It is outstanding. It's outstanding.
I love that. I don't read as much as I once did. I know one of your questions is on books. I mean, there's books right in front of me. There's books to the right. There's books behind me. I'm surrounded by books, and I just find that I work a lot,
Sure.
And speaking of being a strength coach and all that stuff, like I'm coaching at a high school, and you're talking about regrets. Like I left teaching in 2009 at a school district where my pay was maxed out at $94,000, and back then, you'd say, "Oh man, I'm going to make $100,000. That's good living." And now, like $100,000 with this economy is not that good. And so when I left teaching, my online business was booming. My certifications were booming. Everything was, there wasn't a lot of competition. I was kind of one of the earlier guys to do that. And then I started coaching in the colleges, which did not pay well at all, but I still always ran the underground. And then this is my 5th year at a high school where I took in New Jersey, that's a very new job, high school strength coach full-time. But my pay is like so much less than what it was when I left in 2009. And it's crazy because the cost of living has tripled, right? And so I tell young strength coaches, Lucas, that you must learn to write your own paycheck. So you want to leverage technology through the ability to impact others. Or, Jim, as I kind of dig more into the work you're doing, you mentioned you have a summit. You need to make, some people say multiple streams of income is bad. But at times like this, I think it's important. When COVID happened, it was a big bonus for me. I didn't have to figure out how to sell online or offer services or how to help our athletes. I've been online since I started in 2002. And so I think it's important for strength coaches to know how to make money in more than one way.
For sure.
Especially because it's such a... It kind of reminds me of what I said about athletes. There's like that top 5, 7%. that's how the strength and conditioning pay scale is. There's this top 5 or 7% making, a fuckload of money. And then there's all these other guys that make shit money, work their asses off. It fucks up their relationships because they have to get another job so they don't get to spend time with loved ones. And, I like to be very transparent about things, guys, even if it gets me in trouble. When I was at my last college, I was offered a position, and the pay was so bad. It was money I made when living with parents before being engaged. Forget about married. And then when they counteroffered, it was still less money than what I made living with my parents. And I said, if I take this job, I'll still have my gym making money. I still have my online business. But if I would have taken that job at that salary, I was now saying yes for every other strength coach across the country who is going to get those shitty salaries that causes a lot of pain in their life. And that's why I actually cried when I turned the job down, because I loved it so much and I loved the kids and the team, but I had to think about something bigger than what I wanted. And it's not a message I share, but it's important to share it because it's the truth, what I'm saying. And that's the heartbreaking reality that I see in colleges. Is why is there a multi-million-dollar facility and this person is getting paid money that is, they definitely need another job. They definitely cannot buy a house. Maybe they could get a 2-bedroom condo, but probably it's an hour away from their college. And now they got to spend 2 hours a day driving, which is 10 hours a week, which is 40 hours a month, which is a full-time job of driving. So I thought of all these things, and it might offend people out there, but in college, I don't recommend guys go into collegiate strength and conditioning unless they're ready to just work like crazy and they're not, having a family, constantly. Some families like that. I have a buddy that's every couple of years he's in another state and the family embraces it, but he also makes a lot of friggin' money. So that is a less stressful scenario than somebody who's making just kind of middle of the range money.
What's your favorite sport to watch?
Anything that my kids are doing, to be honest with you. Of course, everybody knows I love wrestling. But I love watching my son play baseball. He plays basketball. My daughter plays tennis. I don't hover over her when she plays tennis. It's a bit stressful. It's like a tennis match. She once had a tennis match that lasted something like 3 hours and 15 minutes in Georgia. Yeah, it was easily over 100 degrees.
Oh, man.
And I didn't watch the whole thing. I was kind of in and out. But I love all the little things about watching what they do, especially the work ethic. My daughter was in Rhode Island this weekend. She had prom Friday. She left 30 minutes early. My wife and her drove to Rhode Island 4 hours, got in at 2 a.m., maybe later. Saturday and Sunday, 8 matches, doubles and singles. Today, slept in a little bit, chiropractor, adjustment, massage, and then she went to her strength coach today. I mean,
wow.
Yes, it
Full
blows my
weekend.
mind. She didn't take a day off. She just stuck to the plan. She stays the course. Watching my son, it reminds me of Vision Quest when the guy took the day off from being the chef at the hotel, and what was the kid? Loudon says to him, I think it was his guy's name was Otto. He's like, why you take the day off? You never take the day off. He's like, it's just dumb 6 minutes. And he starts crying, talking about Pele kicking the ball. He's like, it's what happens. It's those moments. And so I actually love, of course, seeing my own kids. But when I'm training a team that is sticks to the training at the high school, like I'd say our most consistent team is girls soccer. When I go to watch them play, it's like, to me, it's like amazing. I love it. And this year they won like the group sectional. And man, after they won, I left because I was like, I think I might cry. So I left. I wasn't on the sideline. I was in the stands. I don't want like the credit to be out there. And the coach said to me, I think she texted me. She's like, we didn't know you were there. Why didn't you come out, get a picture with the team? I'm like, because I don't need the credit. I don't need anybody saying, oh, we won because of you or you helped us win. I just want to watch it all come together. To me, that's the like beauty of sports when I see the work. My least favorite times of sports, and maybe this is wrong of me, is when I see kids who I know are lazy, who skip workouts, who don't do the right thing, who aren't great teammates, and they still win. It breaks my heart because I just don't know what the lesson is there or whatever the way of the world is, but that breaks my heart when I see that.
Well, Tim Grover talks about that in his books, and he
Love
says
his
that
book.
it says winning doesn't really have any loyalty.
Yes.
And just because you worked really hard for it this year, you might slip the next year. And he also says you might do everything 10x of what you're supposed to do. Your nutrition's on point, your recovery's on point, you're doing all the soft tissue work, you're doing everything. And life's not fair, and you might still lose.
Yeah.
But the point is that if you didn't put out like that, you're gonna look back and say, "What if?" Now you don't say, "What if?" Hey, you just got beat that day. Maybe you got beat. The other person's better. Maybe you got beat because there's chance. And if
Yes.
there isn't chance, it's just a training session. The fact that there's chance that there could be bad weather or a bad call or bad play, that helps make it a sport. Without the chance component, it's just a training session, right? So that's part of it. It's the winning's not loyal, and even if you do everything right, you might still lose. So you still put out as much as you can to give yourself the best shot.
Right. Which is why, like my wrestling coach, who's gone the route of saying have fun and score points, it's like let it rip. You've done the work. Let's go. Let it rip. Stop. If you're just so focused on the outcome, your outputs are sometimes hindered. You're just, you don't let it. You're too worried about every little thing happening. I've seen the most successful athletes. They have a lot of fun when they compete. Yeah.
That's why our mantra is called it's win the day. If I'm only happy when I win a title, well, the best athletes don't win titles, right? Karl Malone doesn't win a title. Is he not a Hall of Famer? He is. But you can have some joy if you know that you put out that day and you work really hard and you can feel good about it. So those are wins. So our mantra is that with Athlete Builder and at the gym is, win the day. Favorite book? Do you have one or no?
Yeah, definitely. Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield. I love that book. I've gifted that book, so often. Usually I gift it when I do certifications. His book, The War of Art, is also amazing. But Turning Pro, he thought it was just going to be for authors, and then, dentists and doctors and athletes and just people from all walks of life started getting it. I can't deny or dismiss that Arnold's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, that book changed my life. So did his education of a bodybuilder. Those books were tremendous. I have books around me here, and I always like to keep books in reach. And then, business books that a lot of people don't know about this guy because he was an Ohio guy, by the way, but he kind of started getting out of all the marketing stuff around 2012, 2015, Dan Kennedy. And he had he has many books, but he has a series of books called No BS Books. And people used to buy them at places like Kinko's and things like that. And you would get kind of into his books, and then you would enter like his universe, so to speak, which would be like physical newsletters, CD of the month. And so my favorite books that impacted me tremendously in business from him was No BS Wealth Attraction and No BS Time Management. And my God, those books are so great. You could buy them on Amazon, used for like $3. They're such great books. And then, of course, I love a lot of the old books. The Way to Live was such an amazing book. I bought the original one on eBay in the early days when eBay was more like a garage sale, like a real, how do you say, like it just wasn't right now eBay is like, it's kind of like an Amazon. And then it's not a book, but the old Strength and Health magazines from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, those are a must read for strength coaches. I mean, those magazines are great. You guys might even be able to find them at like garage sales and stuff like that. People cleaning out, their grandparents' basement. Strength and Health magazine. I've got so many of them, and you mentioned your son earlier. I just had this memory. Somebody sent me a box of them, and my son was much younger. He's almost 16 now. Maybe he was 8. And so this box had them, and he said, "What is that, Dad? Is that fan mail?" And I, laugh. I was like, "Yeah, somebody knows that I love this stuff, and they're willing to part with it." And they sent me all of their collection for free. So I got fan mail.
That's awesome. Man, what a gift.
Great gift.
Favorite superhero and favorite villain?
Favorite superhero started for me as the Incredible Hulk. I used to watch the one with Lou Ferrigno. And my parents have a photo of me where they took my jeans, cut them into shorts, and then put the sleeves on my arms. And I made it like they were muscles. So the Hulk, must have inspired me before I knew I would become, bodybuilder. I was watching The Incredible Hulk at age 7, age 8.
My dad would have one. I love it.
And then, of course, The Punisher. I watched the series a couple of years ago. It's a revenge. He is a modern day vigilante, and to me, man, I feel like the world actually needs the modern day vigilantes. But I don't know if I have a favorite villain. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not a fan of the people who do bad things. Although the villain is often who creates the superhero out of necessity.
Can't have one without the other, typically.
Correct. Yeah. Who is your favorite villain guy? I want to hear from both of you on this, guys.
I would maybe say I typically say Hannibal Lecter.
Oh wow!
In the Silence of the Lambs, psychologically, he's all in and getting at your deep issues, and he turns them, see if he can impact you. It's just in a real negative way, and at the end, one of the best lines in the movie, other than "Frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn," he's getting off the phone with Clarice Starling, and
she's the FBI agent, right? She's the agent.
Right, she's the agent. He says, "Don't come looking for me, and I'll extend you the same courtesy." And she goes, "What are you going to do next?" And he says, "I'm having an old friend for dinner." And he says, "I'm having a friend over for dinner. I'm having an old friend for dinner." Mm-hmm. And as he says that, he's looking at the old warden that we used to torture him.
Oh.
He's getting off the plane, and he was there where the warden was going to hide out in this little exotic island, and he was about to go kill him for revenge. And,
wow.
And
I didn't pay attention. I haven't watched that movie for a while, but I remember him in that island outfit. Right. Oh, that's my goodness. That is crazy.
And I was like, I just I don't know, for some reason, right or wrong, probably wrong. It kind of spoke to me, I guess. I don't know.
That is interesting. Lucas, I'm excited to hear from you.
Palpatine from Star Wars.
Who's the name again?
Darth Sidious.
Oh,
he's the Darth Vader's.
With the black and red.
No,
that's Darth Maul.
Darth Sidious. Palpatine is if you watch
he's the Emperor.
I'm
looking him up.
He's the one that influences Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
I like him because he's just a genius. with politics. I kind of get into politics a little bit. So, with him, like politics, the way he influences it and his strategies and the way he influences war and manipulates and just the way he controls everything all the time, and everything he wants to happen happens in some sort of way. And it's just, I just really like his scheme and the way he's just a clever genius. Wow. And next to him would be Darth Vader. So
I have a clear memory of when Return of the Jedi movie came out. My dad took us to the movie theater. This movie theater doesn't exist anymore. It was called Movie City 5 in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And I'd gone to the movies before. I remember going to watch Superman in the movies. But there was a line out the building and wrapped around the building. And, you couldn't buy stuff in advance. And I don't know how we all fit in there. Did they have multiple movies going on at the same time? But I had never seen a line that exited the building and wrapped around this building. Movie City 5. I think that was 1985 or 83. I was like 8 or 10 years old. Yeah. I don't remember when that was.
That's awesome. What's your favorite lift? You want to get one?
Yeah, dang. This is a very tough question. I'd say when I was younger, it was squats before my knee surgeries. I did some crazy stuff with squats. I did 225 for 50 reps, deep squats, 5-0. And I remember thinking about it. I can't remember how long, but I had played it out in my head so many times. I knew there was like going to be no stopping me. I remember doing 315 for 22 when I was 22. I remember doing drop sets of like 405, 5 reps and not racking it. 2 guys strip it down. 315, 10 reps, strip it down. 225, 15 reps. 135, 20 reps. Never racking it. And
that's gross.
People, my son's like, man, too bad YouTube wasn't out back then. You could have recorded it, he says. But that was kind of like the beauty of it. Today, I still love squats. And, that's just a tough question. It's a hard one. I tell you what I like, though, if I could generalize it a bit. Anything that's like outdoors and kind of free and imperfect. So that would be like lifting a stone and carrying it, picking something up and moving it. Like, I call that just man shit. It just reminds me of, as a kid, I remember my father saying, Zach, come downstairs. And The World's Strongest Man was on TV. And I was very young. And I'm watching guys like Lou Ferrigno bending steel on his head, Franco, throwing a tire, and just seeing men strong and doing things that was like a superhero, but they were just, quote unquote, normal humans. It blew my mind. And so I love those kind of exercises that could kind of like that show that you're strong, right? Like you're strong in the gym. Sometimes it doesn't transfer. That's why I love the like ability to lift like odd shit.
Yeah. We have they're self-proclaimed. No one said, hey, these are it. So I saw other states developing manhood stones, and people would drive out there and pick them up. So I have 5 different stones, and I call them collectively the Hoosier stones. And if you pick them up and get them to your chest or your shoulder and you stand up, you can get your name in a leather-bound book. There's one for each. I'll sign it, date, where you're from. All the stones are named. They're all weighed in kilos. And then I offer you a shot of bourbon if you want it. You don't have to have it, but like they do in Scotland, sometimes those places will say, hey, if you pick up the stone, then they'll give you a shot. So right outside my gym, there's 5 of them, and they've been in competitions and stuff. So range from 100 kilos to I forget. It's like 404 pounds, 405 pounds is the biggest one, and it's a good time.
That is amazing. It's amazing that other cultures really prioritize strength, that it's almost like part of, this is how you become a man. And in America, we're so afraid to say it's good to be strong or to just challenge kids. Physical education programs, I think, would be better if people could run them alone rather than being teamed up with other teachers like Mike Bergner, who used to do the CrossFit Olympic lifting.
Oh, yeah.
In the early days of me coming across his work 20 years ago, he was a physical education teacher. But really what he had was a training hall, and there was a bunch of squat stands. And then outside, he had this obstacle course built. It basically looked like a marine obstacle course. It was all the telephone poles. And I forget what that was called. But, the kids were, walking on it for balance. Then they're jumping over it. And so he's squatting and doing snatch and clean and jerk. And then they're outside sprinting and going over and under this obstacle course. But that's only possible when you don't have somebody who's like, can we just walk today? Or let's just do this today. He had a vision, and he was able to really make it come to life. And that's the way I think we get somewhere with physical education. And I love to see these other cultures. They're like, yes, be strong. It is normal. It is good. And they do that for the boys and the girls. Right? Look at these people from Iceland. To be, strength is, like expected. And I think that's amazing.
Like per capita, small country. And how many of those people make it to the CrossFit Games from a small country? How many of them make it to World's Strongest Man? How many, that culture is bred like that, right? And hard elements to live in.
Yes.
And you look at two completely different sports, strongman versus CrossFit, and they have a huge contingency of athletes from that small little country. It's outstanding. And as far as those manhood stones, they're called manhood stones because if you were like in the Even-Esh clan and from, say, Israel or Ireland, you wouldn't be a man until you've picked that stone up to your chest or your shoulder, or sometimes they'll have like a pedestal. You got to pick it up and put it on. So they would say in that culture, all right, you are now of manhood, regardless of age, if you can pick this stone up
Iceland
and
does
prove yourself
as
worthy.
Well.
Mm-hmm.
Was a great, you'll have to buy them on eBay, guys, was Iron Mind. They still sell the back issues, but they had, what was the magazines that Iron Mind, of course,
I have their equipment and some of their books, but I don't think I have any of their magazines.
Iron Mind. Oh, it's called Milo. Yeah. Milo magazine. And those were really cool. They were a bit, very simple, but you could buy them on eBay. But there was always strongman training, grip strength training, stuff was based on just being very strong and useful. And actually, I train a guy online, and I'm very influenced with a lot of that because he has a squat rack that's kind of flimsy and doesn't work good for benching because it only has these limited holes for the J cups. So I have him doing floor presses, and he rolls the bar up, he hip thrusts it back, and he floor presses like that. He could Zercher squat, but everything is kind of this low volume. There was also an old magazine, like a smaller one called Hard Gainer. It was okay. It was all focused on like the high intensity training, one set to failure. Dr. Ken would write for them a lot, but it just was minimalist style. And Iron Mind and Hard Gainer. Iron Mind, even you could go on YouTube and they had like old VHS tapes of stone lifting, training for the Highland Games. They have that stuff on YouTube, and you'll see guys, it's like filmed out of his basement long before the garage gym thing was cool. These definitely look like they were from the 90s because back then, where could you buy strongman equipment from? Nowhere. You needed somebody to weld, and you had to draw it and take it to a welder, and they would machine it for you. They would put it together for you. and you
Yeah,
would just
not even
pray to God that it didn't break.
not even York would put together things like that.
No, York did not have strongman equipment, and now York really, their older equipment is better than their modern day equipment. Their barbells, yeah. Unfortunately, I hate to say it.
Last one, favorite quote. Do you have one?
Yeah, I mean, I say it a lot. Good enough is the death of greatness.
Yes, sir.
I'm just not a fan of people who are like, whatever. Hey, that's enough. Like, hey, listen, your team is only showing up twice a week. They don't show up on this third day. Yeah, but he's there twice. Well, listen, this is what we're supposed to do. Or, hey, we're going to stop training when the season starts. Why? What are we training for? I don't know if I have time. You do have time. It's going to be inconvenient. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. You're going to be tired. You're going to think your son should rest. But, we're talking your doctor friend who's talking about all these ACLs tearing because they're not strong. There's no such thing as weak and successful. There's no such thing as weak and fast. I say it all the time. We're never on the sidelines of any sport saying, man, thank God John Smith is so weak, because if he was strong, like, we'd be screwed. We need him weak. Thank God. Like, we never say that, and when somebody says, hey, it's too strong, to me, when they say that, it simply means the training wasn't properly balanced. Like, you just focused on strength. You didn't include speed, power, athleticism, things that have to be blended together. So good enough is the death of greatness. Let's start striving to be great. I like despise mediocrity, because I know everybody's capable of more.
Yeah. Man, Zach, what a gift today. For everyone that's listening, you can find him, Zach Evan-Esh.com, Facebook, Zach Evan-Esh, Instagram, Z Evan-Esh, YouTube, Zach Evan-Esh, Strong Life Podcast, Underground Strength, Amazon. You just type it in there.
Yes.
I was surprised that I didn't see anything on Wikipedia yet, but it's probably coming down the road.
Yeah. I think, doesn't somebody have to create it?
Someone has to, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
that's
so
funny.
Brought
that
I've been
up.
listening to your show. My wife listens to the show. Like I said, your book in the 531 got me started, and it made an impact, and especially with the carries and the sleds and the sandbags. So it's one of the first things I bought for the gym was sandbags and dumbbells. So thanks for the gift of today, Zach. You're very generous, overly generous. You paid it forward. I know you talked about your weekly calls with Louie, and God rest his soul. The knowledge that you took from him and from so many others, you continue to pass it on, and the impact is real. And we're very, very blessed to have you on, and we're very thankful for it. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas.